I think the book itself is a collection of small moments. Going to college, leaving St. Louis, I went up to Chicago for school. And I think like encountering people who were different from me was a big start. I remember also freshman year of college, I took a world religions class. And the guy that taught it was very Catholic. Maybe it was just being more intellectually stimulated by other things. And those moments started to happen. And I would say really started to come to a head my sophomore year of college. I studied abroad in Rome. Going to Rome, man, it's going to be a hell of a spiritual experience. The seat of the Catholic Church. Like I'm really going to understand all of this. And I just got there and like in the first couple nights, like you go to the Vatican and you see homeless people sleeping under the like huge facade of the Vatican. And you're just kind of like, wow, okay. Something's not right there. But that's the thing. My whole life I was preached to about like Jesus hung out with the poor people. I just got to Rome and all of this started to fall down for me. So I studied abroad in the spring. All this is happening at the beginning, like January. And by Easter, I was a little uncomfortable going to mass. I still went, but I didn't call myself an atheist for 5 years after that, I think.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the I Didn't Read Your Book podcast. I am your host, Lutch, and today we are going to be talking with Ryan Bedell about his book, Altar Boy to Atheist, Giving Up on God. So I wore my Reason Rally 2016 shirt from when I went with a friend to DC. We went to the Reason Rally, which was run by the American Atheists, and it was actually a rally mainly that happens every 4 years and brings some type of secular political issue to the forefront. And that year they were talking about how sexual education in elementary schools was a big deal, and that there was still plenty of places in 2016 teaching abstinence. It's very interesting because that is a if we end up going down that road, I think a lot of what sexual education has become, there's a lot of things on the other side of that now it's like, well, okay, now I want to have a different conversation from a different perspective for very different reasons. But we can get all into that. I'm loving the little altar boy picture here. I think a lot of us can relate to. I personally was never an altar boy, but I've been in these church scenarios. I was Catholic growing up. I did do what do they call it? Ushering, where you like collect the money from the pews and stuff like that. So just being part of the service when you're a kid is supposed to be a relatively high honor. And specifically being an altar boy is one of the higher things a young child can do in the church to help out. And of course, we all know where there is some not so cool stuff around altar boys in the Catholic Church. And for the algorithm's sake, I kind of hope, and for Ryan's sake, I hope we don't go down that road. But it very well could be the very reason that he went to giving up God. So no more guesswork. Let's just dive right in and read the back of the book. Ryan M. Bedell is a St. Louis, Missouri native, currently living in Brooklyn, New York. He works in higher education and spends his free time smoking bacon and watching baseball. Ryan received his bachelor's degree from Loyola University Chicago in 2014 and his Master of Science in Education from University of Oxford in 2017. Ryan will complete his studies for a Master of Business Administration at New York University in 2022. You can find him on Instagram at Ryan Bedell. That should be right below me. Well, not yet, but when we get there, it'll be right below me. So that's a nice little about the author, but again, does not tell me a single thing about the what's in the book. So let's pop this into Amazon here. Okay. So Altar Boy to Atheist, Giving Up God is as much a random collection of thoughts about the world as it is a story of someone discovering themselves anew throughout different periods of their life. Ryan Bedell grew up Catholic, and now he's not. The book tries to explain why and how Ryan went from youth group leader to an agnostic atheist, and his stories of different religious experiences around the world will resonate with readers from any background. All right. So again, not really telling me too much of what's going on. I understand that he was an altar boy and now he is an atheist. And between even emailing him, the cover, the back of the book, and the Amazon description, that's all I know. So I don't, as an atheist who has gone through my own journey of journey to atheism, as they will commonly refer to it, just by the information that we have, this is not something that I would be interested in purchasing, because I would think that this is something for somebody who hasn't had this type of journey or is currently going through this type of journey. Either or. But if you have been an active member of the church and now you're an agnostic atheist, as I am as well, then in terms of a conversation, I'm definitely interested in this conversation, and I'm definitely interested in comparing notes on what his experiences were like, what my experiences were like. And I'm hoping that it's a very engaging conversation, and a different type of conversation than what I had with Rusty in IDRYB 09, Doubt on Trial. Him being an agnostic pastor, he wasn't, remember that agnostic means that you don't know, and theism is the belief in a god or gods. And so he was an agnostic theist, Rusty was, whereas Ryan and I are agnostic atheists. We don't know, but we do not hold a or accept a claim in a belief in a god or gods. So I don't know, like the story itself, I'm assuming, is just the straightforward what happened to him. And so I'm looking forward to talking to him for a while about it and to hear about what happened. But I'm wondering if there is some type of hook that is more than just that story, because while those stories are interesting, and I think mine's actually, I think I have a story that is not necessarily the most interesting. I think it's rather, I didn't have any big things happen to me. Again, I'm hoping nothing bad happened to Ryan. But I am interested again to find out what it is that drew him away from the church. But again, even my own story, even though it wasn't very action packed, and it probably wouldn't make a good book. So maybe his story is better, but the thought process was still there. It was still a thing. So I don't know. Let's see. It'll definitely be an interesting conversation. I know that for sure. My worry is, what is the hook for others to want to buy the book? So on that note, let's bring in Ryan. All right. And welcome to Ryan Bedell. Is it?
Yes.
I'm terrible with names. That one's not even too hard, but I mess up everybody's name. So I just
would be surprised. Some people get it really wrong. So you were spot on.
Awesome. Well, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well, I'm a little tired. I had a similar experience as you did, went out with some friends last night. So just recovering today.
Yeah, just full disclosure, everybody, if I look a little tired, I definitely am a little tired. Today is my 32nd birthday, and I went out last night and celebrated a little bit, but I am back and ready to go. So what are you tired from? Church this morning?
Yeah, exactly. I was up at the crack of dawn for church. So no, just a couple, one too many shots of whiskey, nothing too crazy.
Same thing all around. Love it. So we had just finished taking a look at and I gotta say, it wasn't very informative as to what is in the book. And as someone who has a very similar, I would say, trajectory as you, having been brought up Catholic and then losing my faith around the time I was in college. I always like to say I never had like a come away from Jesus moment, but I do remember my freshman year in college. We were still using AOL Instant Messenger and away messages, and I used to put Bible verses in my away messages. So I was full believer at that point. And then very, very quickly after, with just a few psychology courses, a few philosophy courses, I was out of there. And so, I definitely, without having that come away from Jesus moment, I don't necessarily have a big story to tell. However, the thought process of going from being a believer to a non-believer, I think is, while it's definitely unique unto each person, the process itself is probably, in my experience, and talking to other people, relatively similar.
Totally.
And so
Even-
what? Go ahead.
Even just when you were saying right there, that little bit, a lot of that resonated with me. So
yeah, so I'm wondering, and I was saying in the reading the back of the book segment that I'm definitely interested to have this conversation. But what I'm curious about from the perspective of somebody buying the book, what is the hook about your journey specifically that would be why somebody would buy the book?
Sure. So I think I agree with you in that in my life, there was never really one major like coming away from Jesus moment. I just don't think that's how religion works. I think if it's really got its claws into you, it's a lot more difficult than just sort of like, I'm done. I don't know anyone who's had that experience. And
Really?
in a lot of ways, I think that would be easier. I wish.
Oh, hell yeah.
I would wish for sure. But I think the hook of the book is that I was about as Catholic as you could get. I was leading major mega retreats. I was involved in every way, every youth group possible in my town. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. So it's an incredibly Catholic town in general. And most of the people that you will meet from St. Louis, the way that you get to know them is you ask what high school they went to. And they're all Catholic high schools. So,
okay. Because I was gonna say, I thought you were gonna say, what church do you go to? Like, oh, okay. Where's this? But it's a
not
Catholic
quite
church.
that far.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally the same thing basically. But yeah, so I about the same timing as you as well. When I was a senior in high school, I was still very, very like completely into it, leading retreats. I mean, like breaking down, crying at retreats, like very, very much into everything that religion had to offer, and like maybe festering a little bit on like, oh man, I try to be nice to people, and like there's some things in this that aren't necessarily nice to everyone, but like not really giving that thought process
just kind of putting it over here.
Exactly. So I didn't start to, and I honestly truly believe like the two things that stick out for me is if I hadn't left St. Louis, I would not be away from religion, A, and B, I think the sort of thesis of the book is I think I'm a better person without religion. And I don't know that that is necessarily the case. I'm not the greatest person on the planet. That's not the claim that I'm making, but I think there are a lot of concrete ways in the book that I can point to where it's like, I was really kind of an asshole before I started to get away from it. And I mean, like I tell a story about literally protesting at an abortion clinic. So like takes a certain level of humility to be able to admit that that is something that I've done in my life. But
you were in there. You were in there.
I was really in. Yeah, totally. And like, I mean, I have a tattoo in the middle of my back that says AMDG, which is Latin for Ad Majorem Dei Gloriam, to the greater glory of God. And like, it's just like as far in as you could possibly have been. Truly.
I was this close. I remember there was this dude I would hang out with in college, and he would do illustrations, and I didn't have any tattoos yet. I actually didn't end up getting any. I'm like covered now, but I didn't end up getting Yeah. I didn't end up getting any tattoos until after college. But I asked this dude, I was like, yeah, can you draw up this image that I want to get tattooed across my back of Jesus, like me falling and Jesus holding me in his arms. And I mean, for what it was a pretty cool drawing, but oh my God, like I'm honestly, the way that I view my tattoos, I would not be, because I don't have anything on my back. And if I did have it on my back, I still would be all about the tattoo itself.
Yeah.
Because I think that would just be hilarious at that point. But I am very glad that I don't have that tattoo.
Well, people always ask me, they're like, do you regret it? And I'm like, no, I don't regret it. Like, I am who I am now.
Exactly.
I definitely have some regrettable actions that happened, such as protesting at an abortion clinic, that I'm obviously not proud of. But at the same time, all of that made me who I am. And like, when I see the tattoo, very rarely, like when I'm looking in the mirror or something, it's a reminder of how far I've come. I mean,
Instagram poses.
Exactly. Just a little. Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, it's just, I don't really try to harbor too many regrets, but at the same time, it's definitely still in the middle of my back.
So I definitely resonate with what you say about being a better person now. But I can see that not clicking with a lot of people. Can you dive into that a little bit more? And what do you mean by that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it doesn't click at all with religious people. I think that saying that, like, so to give you some context on like my life and where this book came into it, like my parents aren't really religious anymore, but my grandfather's a Catholic deacon. Like, it is really ingrained in my family. So there are quite a few family members who are not necessarily happy with this book coming out. And like, I get it. It's when it's that big of a part of your life. But I think that's the crux for me, is that it becomes such a big part of your life that like you're willing to ignore conflicting information to your beliefs, because you're literally told it's your salvation. You're going to go to heaven, all this stuff. Like, sure, that's life or death, literally. So I get why people buy into it so hard, but like, I couldn't get over certain humps until I was free of just the label, even like not calling myself a Catholic anymore, but being able to say like, okay, so maybe like the whole like harassing women at an abortion clinic thing isn't great to do, even if it's in the name of your religion. Or like, maybe gay people should be able to get married if they want to. Like, just literally the doctrine that like I didn't really believe, I don't think, in my heart of hearts. Like, I sort of knew it was wrong, but at the same time, like it didn't bother me to say it out loud that that's what I believe, because it was like, well, that's what I'm told to believe. So
that's what everybody else is doing. And that's
totally.
And I think the most insidious part is how much, there really is a lot of good things in, core Christian values. There's no denying that. I mean, my whole thing, I'm not going to get on my soapbox. So my whole thing is that the atheist movement has kind of gone awry because of the fact that the spiritual aspect of what people had in their churches is not highlighted. And so they leave behind the bullshit, which is good, but they don't take with them, the good stuff. They don't take with them that the stuff that we as secular, looking at morality from a secular perspective, we have to actually contend with, okay, what is the morality of this, that, the other thing? And not to say that Christians don't do that or religious people don't do that, but they have that backbone of, well, this is what God says, so it is. And so
it's spot on. It's spot on. And that was a huge problem for me. What do I believe now? And like, beyond the spirituality aspect of it, there's so many things that are comforting to a person. I was bullied as a kid, and like having that community was huge for me. And so like to drop that was losing friends, and so you're spot on, man. You could have written the book yourself.
Well, and again, that's what's so let's dive into specifically what, you were saying. You were, obviously I assume you were an altar boy. And you up until later in your life, you were doing these things at the protests and stuff. So where did the change occur, and what was
Sure.
that? What was the catalyst for you to really start down that road? And then what happened on that road and to get you where you are today?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm gonna do a fair bit of paraphrasing because honestly, like I think the book itself is a collection of small moments and of small pieces along the way where my changing and thinking happened. And so I would say going to college, leaving St. Louis, I went up to Chicago for school. And I think like encountering people who were different from me was a big start. Like I grew up in a very insulated community, truly. Like it was, I only had Catholic friends. I only had white friends. I only had middle class friends. Like there was really uh, no change in the people that I was encountering on a day-to-day basis. And my view of people who were different from me was entirely media, entirely like hearing from family and friends. So once I got to college and was like met a gay person, I was like, holy shit, this guy's awesome. Like, I don't know, like, and I write about that in the book. Like, he's still a friend of mine. Basically, I remember very vividly like talking to him, but we never really like broached the religion topic, just sort of like we're friends and that was it. And he was like telling me a story about a dude that he was hooking up with, and I would like think he could see on my face that I was like uncomfortable. And he was like, "What's up, man?" And I was just like, wow, fuck. I was like, fuck, I'm an asshole. Like if I sat here and told him about a woman that I was hooking up with, I'm expecting him to sit here and listen to like that story, but I can't sit here and listen to like his relationship problems because I'm a homophobe. Like it just, that's little things like that started to happen in college. So I remember also freshman year of college, I took a world religions class, and
Hmm.
the guy that taught it was very Catholic, like unabashedly very
Okay.
Catholic. And so he just like had this lens of maybe like looking down on these other religions as he's teaching about them. And I was just like,
Mm.
man, like really, we're
Like
I had this idea that I was there to learn.
one of
And
these
maybe
things is not like the other.
exactly. It was very like uh prejudicial in a lot of ways, I would say. And so I maybe it was just being more intellectually stimulated by other things and like learning more outside of my comfort zone. But those moments started to happen, and I would say really started to come to a head my sophomore year of college. I studied abroad in Rome, and
Cool.
most people would think, and I thought at the time, going to Rome, man, it's going to be a hell of a spiritual experience, the seat of the Catholic Church. Like I'm really gonna understand all of this. And I just got there, and like in the first couple nights, like you go to the Vatican and you see homeless people sleeping under the like huge facade of the Vatican, and you're just kind of like, wow, okay,
Uh,
something's not right there. But that's the thing. My whole life I was preached to about like Jesus hung out with the poor people. Jesus like was good to people who were different from him. Like I could name 5 Bible stories, like Zacchaeus, the tax collectors, like all these people
yeah.
who he was supposedly really, cool to, who were not like him and weren't anything special. And like I just got to Rome, and all of this started to fall down for me. I went into the Vatican. Obviously, you go see the museums. And I'm just like, okay, so we have a lot of art stolen from other people here. We have a lot of gold and shit that might feed those people outside. So it just didn't start to take long after that. I remember, so I studied abroad in the spring. All this is happening at the beginning, like January. And by Easter, I was a little uncomfortable going to mass. So
Wow.
I still went, but
Yeah.
was a little uncomfortable. And I didn't call myself an atheist for 5 years after that, I think.
Wow.
So yeah,
Wow.
felt good too
Yeah.
once I eventually did.
Right. Yeah, I definitely I had very because my parents are still very religious,
Mhm,
and so it took a long time for I mean, like I was, because I was off at college, it wasn't, I wasn't going to church anymore or anything like that. But on Christmas, we were supposed to, we went to to mass, and
mhm,
um it was a very weird thing to just be like, I'm not doing that anymore. Like
mhm.
I've been doing this for you for a number of years, and I don't feel like I should have to do that anymore. That's
Well,
it.
when
And
you're on the outside of it, attending mass is weird. It is weird.
fucking weird. I mean, if you saw it in any other context, which you could say about so many things of religion, just pretending the body and blood of Christ, and I mean, you could go down the list. It's just, it's very, very, very odd. And so once you take that step and you are out of the religion, whether or not you're being open about it, and whether you're with yourself and other people, whether you're identifying yourself or identifying to other people as an atheist, once you there is that step that you take, that you're like, okay, no, I really am done. Even if you've been flirting with it and kind of questioning things for a while, there's a point at which you're done. And so at that point, as you alluded to before, you have to now figure out, okay, well, what do I believe? Because my beliefs from birth till now have been spoon-fed to me by people who had it spoon-fed to them. And so, luckily I was in, again, a lot of my philosophy courses helped with this, and talked about, how the concept of God and religion played into ethics and the philosophy of morality and stuff. And so for me, it was, perfect timing, right as I was coming out of my religious phase, to be in a class with a great professor. Actually, I interviewed him for my last podcast that I did. We did a pretty cool episode, and I figured out, we talked about absurdism, and I realized that's best how I like to identify myself. So what was the process like for you to start from zero and be like, okay, how do I do this, and what do I do, and was it a straight line? Was it what was that like?
Yeah, nothing post-religion has been a straight line at all, and I think that's how life should be. Like, life's not usually straightforward, but what you were sort of saying at the beginning there was spot on. There is a moment where it sort of clicks, like, I'm done with this, but also, like, there's a lot of little moments that lead up to that. Like, I remember fondly the moment that I first said I was an atheist. I was in Istanbul, and I was at a hostel, and the guy that owned the hostel was just a sweet man, and he had a Syrian woman working for him, and like, I was the literal only person in the hostel. This is like I don't know, maybe like a Wednesday afternoon, and so I'm sitting down, and like, they had a little counter where you could order food, and I'm talking to the guy, and he wanted to learn how baseball works. So I was like, all right, I'll explain to you how baseball goes. And I made some comment somewhere in the course of this baseball discussion about religion, and like, this conversation started, and I was like, oh, like, I know there's a lot of religion sort of coming together in Istanbul. It's not everyone is one thing. And I was like, oh, do you identify as Muslim or Christian? And I just assumed that was the dichotomy, because that's what I thought of when I thought of Istanbul. And he was like, oh no, I'm an atheist. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. And so I was like, me too, I'm an atheist. And I was just like, wow, okay, I said it.
That's
like,
the first
time. Yeah. And so building from that, like, I started to slowly, I think, be a little more out and about with it. Like, I'll post a meme about atheism now and not think twice about it, but I was definitely not like shouting it to the mountains back then. And I think part of that was, like you said, still not knowing exactly who I was going to be in the context of this morality, spirituality, all these things that were what I had been given and shown how to do in one context, and how I might do them in another context. And reading and philosophy were big ones. Still, one of my favorite books is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. And it was really just like moral philosophy in a way that was like, all right, we do this because it's how things are done, not because like there's a reason for it even. It's just like, you don't kill people because you don't kill people. And that sort of led me to reading about like the evolution of morality, and how there literally is an evolutionary pathway of like, our brains evolve, and we don't normally think of our brains evolving. We think of like, okay, well, we developed thumbs, and we did all these other cool things where now we walk on hind feet, and whatever, all of that. But our brains evolve, and like, I think morality is embedded in that in a way, and I find a lot of comfort in that. Like, I don't necessarily need to have a reason for why I come to my moral decisions, but I also know I'm not going to kill anyone. My general moral philosophy is just don't hurt people. Like it
Yeah,
sounds
right. That's
corny.
that's always the funniest thing to me when it's always the Christians who are like, well, why don't you just go rape and murder? It's like, are
Totally.
you are you like out here trying to rape and murder and just not because the Bible says? Like, that's not how I operate, dude.
Well,
Um,
people seem to think Christianity was spread by a lot of kumbaya, and it was not. It was not.
that's another great point. And it's interesting that you say it because I absolutely went through a militant atheist phase in the
Same.
beginning
Same.
because of I just the anger of being lied to and
Hmm.
the Catholic shame all my life and just your whole worldview gets flipped upside down and you're just angry and now you know that you're right and they're wrong and so it's you just wanted to prove it to everybody. I went through that for a couple years and then
Same.
you kind of settle down and realize like, all right, this isn't really a battle that I'm winning this way. And it's more about just living, living authentically and showing people that, I'll absolutely engage a religious debate if you bring it to my doorstep any day of the week. But, I just don't go looking for trouble because people aren't convinced that way.
Totally.
And
And I mean, telling people they're stupid's literally never made anyone come around to a point. And obviously, you see that in political discussions. And I think it's tough for me to sell to people that I don't consider myself like militant atheist at all anymore. But like,
so sorry to interrupt your podcast experience. I just want to remind you if you are enjoying what you're watching, please hit the like button and subscribe for more content. And if you really love it, there's some support links in the description. I would love if you could help out the channel. And back to the show.
once you write a book with that in the title, I think that's like what people think. And I try to devote a fair amount of time to that in the book because when I first like really dove in, I was very much like full on Bill Maher, right? Like just really in people's faces, like trying to say like, you're an idiot. And like, now I realize that I too was an idiot. And that just is like, A, it's not nice and not good to do to people, but B, like, you're not going to win anyone over that way. So I really wanted people to listen to me, I think. And that's why you get angry and why you act that way. And I realized no one was going to listen to me if I did that. So I think to a certain degree, like where I stand on sort of like the religious discussions or having a discussion with religious people is sort of like the old school, like you don't talk about politics and religion at the dinner table. And like, I don't even really try to engage people head on with it anymore. But if someone says something ignorant, like, oh, gay people shouldn't be able to get married, I'm not going to hold my tongue on something that I think is an issue of morality, essentially.
Right.
But like,
Right.
is there a God? I don't really need to have that conversation with people,
Interesting. Because I do also identify myself as an anti-theist. I do
Yeah.
believe that religious is actively harmful to our society, and that the whole thing about parsing the good stuff from the bad stuff and not doing that is, I mean, pick if whatever the person's biggest societal problem. I guarantee it boils down to the fact that either you're too into religion or you're so out of religion that you have no spiritual moral framework and that's what's causing whatever you're complaining about. And so if we can just get rid of all of that language and the dogma and there are places in society for people to have that community, to have that ritual, to have that to go and sing songs that they like and have it be considered a spiritual experience. And
Totally.
it doesn't exist. And
I don't know about you. I'm a huge music guy, and like I've been to concerts that I very much
well,
consider spiritual experiences.
well, that's what I'm saying. And same. I was really into like the hardcore metal scene growing up,
Mhm.
and then once I discovered drugs, then I got
As one
into
does.
I got into electronic music, and
Nice.
definitely like I the effect of seeing confetti falling is one of the most surprising things that has ever happened to me. I was just like, wow, this is actually very impactful.
Yeah.
And when you're just in a huge crowd, I was at Electric Zoo,
Nice.
maybe 2013, and watching, who was I watching? Above and Beyond. One of my favorites, and they are just very emotional type of music, and they had this whole show and the fireworks and the confetti, and it's like you get lost in it. And the
Yeah.
same in the same, but the problem is that that's not considered in the same realm as, your Sunday experience in the temple, in the cathedral. And
But
that's
it's the same feeling, isn't it?
it absolutely is. And one is considered, inherently tied to morality, and one doesn't, is just a thing. And it's frustrating that we can't show that both of those, the good part of that is not that you're in a church. The good part of that is that you're feeling what you're feeling and you're connecting all of that stuff. That's what everybody's missing. And so, I mean, a lot of what I'm saying about that religion being the only game in town is me parroting the work of Sam Harris. So how familiar are you with like the new atheists, like the Dawkins, Harris, Krauss, Hitchens, and
Yeah.
who's the other one?
I started with Dawkins for sure. I would say the God delusion was definitely a big thing for me, where I was like, oh my God, like people think about this. I don't necessarily need to do this all on my own, like I can look to other people for that sort of insight. And I would say less so in the last couple of years, but there was a time where those were the only books I was reading. Like I just couldn't get enough of it. And I definitely appreciate that. And I tried to say in the book, I think also appreciate that, like, not a lot of what I have to say is super original. It's very much my experience. And I think my experience is a good story, more so than I think I should preach anyone should live their life,
Right.
I'm not there to say, do it as I do.
Yeah, no, okay. That's that's interesting that you say that. That frames things very differently. And like you said, it's not about telling anybody what to do. It's just sharing your experience, which I think is, definitely helpful to people who are in that process. For some it's easier than others. Like I said, for me, it wasn't really too arduous. There was definitely, there's definitely that cognitive dissonance where you're not really sure what's real and all that stuff. And then, of course, like I said, the anger when you realize that you've been lied to your whole life. But again, it's not like there was some crazy thing that happened and that tore me away from the church. And I was, coming in, I was worried because we all know what the association between altar boys and the Catholic Church are. And I was like, I hope for Ryan's sake that that's not what this is. But if it does go down that road, then I will definitely understand a little bit more about what is in this book.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I didn't, obviously I talk about the sex scandal in the book and like how that affected me and how I thought, but didn't even occur to me with the title. And so many people besides you have been like, dude, are you about to like come out and say some shit in this book? And I'm like, no, like did not happen to me. Grateful that it didn't happen to me, but also like, fuck the church for that. So I don't know. I mean, it's interesting because when I think about the process, maybe it would have gone a little bit faster for me, but I also didn't have the language. I didn't have the background of Dawkins and these other people. And so like when I describe myself now, I would say I'm an anti-theist as well. Like I don't necessarily think religion is the greatest thing on the planet, but also like there's different ways that you can conceptualize that.
Right.
I think eventually religion will phase out of humanity. And like I also don't think screaming at people right now, your religion's the worst thing on the planet, is the way that things are going to change. But I also like didn't know how to describe myself spiritually. So like I'm an atheist. I can say that pretty confidently, but I can also say that I'm an agnostic atheist. Like I believe that there is no God, but also I leave open the possibility that I'm wrong. Like at the end of the day, like I have my beliefs because I believe that they are grounded in the reality that I live in. But if at the end of the day I die and there's some dude at a pearly gate, I'm going to be like, well, guess I was wrong. Like
you're still an asshole, but I guess you're real.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, I definitely, any chance I get, I especially because this isn't, it's funny. I've had three Christian writers on so far in the past.
Yeah.
Like the show's only been going for a couple months, and I never intended it for really to talk too much about the atheism part of me necessarily. Like I said, this is more for the author, for you. But you know, if it comes to my doorstep, then if you want to talk about your book, then sure.
I can talk about it forever, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the interesting thing is exactly, you know, that's exactly my whole thing. What you said is that when you didn't have the language, it was trapped in the religious language. You did have the language, and I think that's why, at least for me, why I feel like it is important to talk about being an atheist and why that is an option. Not that that's what you should be, but what it is not. And it's not saying, you know, that we are absolutely sure that a God doesn't exist. Some people, some atheists do subscribe to that, but that's not what atheism is. Some atheists also, you know, use only Apple products, and some atheists only use Android products. And so, but like, that's not part of atheism.
Yeah.
And I mean, all the way down to like when people are talking about like Mussolini and you know, the Italian and Russian dictators that were atheists, and like well, yes, they were atheists, but there were also a lot of Christian people who were shitty in the world too. So what are we doing? That's a non-starter. But it doesn't register with people that way. And I just feel an obligation as an anti-theist to have these types of conversations in a way that will get across to people. And you're right that, you know, like we've both realized through our own experiences that yelling at people and calling them stupid doesn't work. But, you know, having conversations to develop the language to explain why we should be basing whatever it is in life. We should be looking at it and basing things on reality, not on things we agree that we don't know, or things that we don't know if we know. And then from the morality side, that it just is not, it doesn't need to be inherently tied to all that stuff. So if we break it apart and we give it its own secular language, then even if you are a Christian, you should want those who are not, or whatever religion, you should want those who are not of your religion or of any religion to have the same values as you and the same moral background as you. Even if they don't believe what you believe, you want them to act in the way that you want people to act. And that's my thing. We need to have these conversations so that you know, others, younger people who are coming through this and being indoctrinated, have the language and have the wherewithal to be able to question things in such a way that if they want to believe, go ahead and believe. You're wrong, but go ahead. I don't really care about what people believe personally in the sense that, you know, I want to change what you're thinking. I care about what people believe because belief leads to actions. And so when you believe that, you know, when you believe atrocities, you can, or what's the line? When you, I don't know, something that if you believe crazy shit, you'll do atrocities.
No, I mean, I honestly, I couldn't agree more that just having the language out there is important. And it sounds a little, I don't know, maybe coming from my therapist that I'm a big fan of I statements. Like, if I'm having a conversation with someone about a religion and I'm you do this, you don't do that, all of this, more, I'm trying to set an example for them. Like, I am an atheist. I think I'm a pretty good person overall. It's not to say I don't fuck up because I do frequently, but I think just being able to like give someone the agency of like, this is how someone else is living their life, and it's an alternative to what they're doing. Because I know as a young Catholic, I did not understand that there was another alternative at all. It was Christian or bust. And the only time as a kid that I started to see people who were different from me, and I definitely got to see how poorly they were treated, was after the Balkan War. So 96-ish, something like that. The largest population of Bosnians to immigrate to the US ended up in St. Louis. And the vast majority of them were Muslim because the Muslims were the ones that were being killed in Bosnia. And so I remember like very vividly, like friends, parents being like, oh yeah, like fuck them. Like these, they're coming in, they're taking our jobs, they're doing like exactly like shit that you hear parroted obviously all the time from the right. But it just didn't occur to me like that sort of hate existed, I guess. And so like it wasn't necessarily as a kid that I was like, I would say I started to develop hateful attitudes when I was in high school and Catholic, and I started to like really feel like I needed to buy in, considered the priesthood, like I was really like very into it. But as a kid, you just don't know any better. Like as a kid, I wasn't like, oh yeah, like they're Muslims, so fuck them. It was more like these people are different, and I just had never encountered anyone who was different from me. And so I ended up like really regretting that I didn't go out of my way as a kid to like try and make these poor people who were fucking escaping war feel more at home, you know. But hindsight's 2020. Yeah,
right. So I'm interested in your before you were, when you were still in the church, what was really besides the obvious beliefs themselves, because I was never that gung-ho about church itself. I was a believer in the stuff. I was a believer in God. I was a believer in sin and prayer and all that stuff. But going to church was still just a thing that we had to do on the weekends, and it was boring. And I don't know if that was maybe just my church was boring. We ended up actually moving over to, like, my mom tried to start a youth mass. And it was this abysmal. It was this abysmal thing. It was literally me playing drums, a dude with a violin.
Okay.
I think maybe a chick with a flute, and like 5 kids singing. And it was just
odd combo.
It was just regular mass, but we would play the hymns the same way that, like, so, and that's all we could get away with the father there. So, I think that really put my mom off, because she was gung ho about, like trying to get kids more interested, because especially, her own kids were just not into it. And then, like when we had to go to CCD, and we had to go to CCD and mass after, or sometimes depending on, like, if my dad wanted to sleep in, he would go to the later one. Then we could skip, and it was just like, it was a chore. It was a chore.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I also was taking guitar lessons when all through elementary school, and I would do that on Saturday mornings. And so I never got and then, like, during the summers, I would go to summer camp. So whether I was in school or it was the weekend or it was the summer, I never got really that experience of just like sleeping in and lounging around all day, just like ever.
Feels pretty good once you do get it, doesn't it?
That's why I don't fucking do shit anymore. So guitar lessons, as much as I love playing guitar and being a guitar player, and wanted to be in bands and all of that, and take that for going to guitar lessons too, was a chore in and of itself. But so that being said, the what was really driving you to not want to only just be an active member, but be as into it as you were?
Yeah, I mean, a large part of it was the community, for sure. Like I said, I did not have a ton of friends as a young kid, and I think religion started to provide friends, and then you see friends who are really into like the singing at mass, and like it sort of just becomes another communal aspect of it. You're all singing together, you're all doing something together, like you're all having this experience together. And I don't know that I ever was really like enthused necessarily about going to mass, but the fact that I was like doing it with those people, it never felt like a chore either. So I felt like a chore when I was a kid, for sure. But I mean, like, as I got a little bit older and was like, 7th, 8th grade, and like started to get into high school, was definitely something where, like, when it was a part of the youth group, or it was something where I like knew I was going to be seeing people I enjoyed hanging out with, that I looked forward to it, for sure. And And part of that's, I think, being a kid and not fully understanding also. Like, it's one thing to be at where we're at now in 30s and believing and really being super engaged in the mass. Like, that's a Catholic. They're not going anywhere. But like, to be a kid, like, you don't really know any better. And Dawkins talks a lot about like sort of the immorality of indoctrinating kids. And I totally agree with that. I think if what you have to say to them is so true, why do you need to ram it down their throats from such a young age? Like, will they come to it themselves? I don't know.
Probably not. That's why you need to run it down their throat so hard. Yeah.
Exactly.
And yeah, now that you say that, I'm thinking about when that youth mass didn't I don't remember if I finished that story, but when that didn't work out, we had moved over to a Methodist church, and that was a little bit more lax, and the community aspect was a little bit more robust. And same thing with the youth group. The kids there were a little bit more into the activities of the church. So that definitely makes sense that, and that, the community aspect, the more engaging and robust that is, the more it's going to be engaging.
And as a Methodist, you don't have to be a cannibal either. You can just like, it can be symbolic.
Exactly. And so I'm also wondering about, once you have, especially being somebody who was out protesting and heavily involved in your church and thinking about going to the priesthood. Once you go to college and you come back as an atheist, how in Missouri, that I'm sure doesn't go over very well with most people, because I'm up here in Jersey, so it's most people are I think do identify as Christians or some religion, but I don't think there are that many people, or at least that big of a concentration of people who are really, really into it, as what I would expect is down in Missouri.
No, you're right. You're spot on. I mean, it's a spectrum for sure. I mean, I still have people that I know from youth group friends, I would say, that are still really into it. And like, I got a couple of over the years, I've gotten a couple of messages like, you seem to be straying down a not so good path. When I published the book, like, I remember I posted on Facebook like, hey, here's my book, this is the link to buy it. And some dude that was like a youth group leader when I was really young was just like, oh, like, never would have expected this from you, like, just something really condescending. And I was like, all right, man, like, you don't even know me anymore.
Disappointed. Yeah, like,
but I think I'm definitely sort of an odd duck for people from Missouri, where I grew up. Not to say that I don't have a ton of friends there and a lot of people that I'm still in contact with, but there's definitely a cohort of people in Missouri who were like, what is up with this dude? Like, who is he? Like, I moved out of the country pretty much immediately after college and was gone until 2018. So like, I think in a lot of ways, beyond the religion, people are sort of see me as an alien. And I don't know, maybe that's
not one of them.
Totally. Yeah. And
gotcha.
I think like I see social media of like dudes I was super close friends with in high school who I just have nothing in common with anymore. Like, it's just a different life. Totally.
It's very interesting. And so I always like to ask about the publishing process.
Yeah.
Because one day I would like to write a book. I think I would. There's some nonfiction book in here. I have a lot of ideas, but I don't really know how to organize them into what would be a readable book. So I'm not there yet, but I'm always interested in what the writing process, what made you decide to, not just have this experience, but turn it into a book.
Sure. So one of my times living out of the country was getting a master's degree in England at Oxford. And so that was one of the first places of my life where like everyone around me was an atheist. There were very few, there were religious people, but like it was much more people who were not. And so I just like really felt at home. Like, I was just like, holy shit. Like, I didn't fit in a whole host of other ways. Like, I was the only person I knew that had tattoos, and like, I was studying education. Some people were studying like theoretical particle physics. So not going to say that it was ever totally a home, but as far as religion, it definitely was a place where I felt like I fit in. And so I was just like in my dorm room one day, and I had always sort of journaled for myself, just to like put my thoughts down on paper, and was journaling about my religious experience. And honestly, like that was literally a snap moment where I was like, okay, I think I want to write a book about this. And so it took me 4 years, I guess, maybe a little more. And the pandemic definitely helped just because I didn't really have much else to be doing.
Right.
But I started in my dorm room at Oxford and probably wrote, I don't know, 10, 15,000 words by the time I had left. So maybe a fifth of what I ended up with. And then more started happening over the years. I mean, I moved to New York and had experiences here that I include in the book. And I had some time to reflect on sort of the bigger picture, I would say, because I had the littler picture, and the littler picture is the nuts and bolts of any story, right? It's who said what, when, where, why, how. Right. Excuse me, when, where, how. The why is the part that is what takes time to come around to. So honestly, like I would beat myself up for not going fast enough, for not writing enough, for not taking the time on it. And like I'm trying to write a fiction book now, which is a totally different animal, but I definitely have the mindset now where like you don't want to make writing feel like a chore. Like if you're in the groove and you like smoke a J and you sit down and you're ready to write, then write. Great, good for you. But like I also do not feel guilty if it's been a couple weeks and I haven't sat down at my computer and written anything. And I think if you're someone who's doing it for a living and you're like you're on a deadline and you got to do it, like that's a totally different story to me. I think it takes a special kind of person to force their brain to write like that. And like, I think I'm a good writer, but also like, I think
when you want to be,
when I want to be. Exactly.
Yeah. I definitely hear that. I definitely can understand how, because I mean, just doing, like I said, this is, I just released, what is it? Today is the, oh yeah, it's my fucking birthday.
Yes, it is.
Today's the 28th of November, and I just released the 11th episode this past week. And so still pretty new, and it is a lot. There's a lot to do, especially, like I said, I had an old podcast, but that was audio only. And even that was very involved. And, now having to do video too, there's a lot. And so it gives you a whole new respect for people who just have these, short 2-minute videos. A lot of work goes into that. It's like,
totally. Well,
all right, I gotta do this.
Small time is one thing too, and can definitely talk about that in the publishing process. But like, you don't seemingly have millions of dollars to spend on this podcast, and like some people do. Some people can hire people to do that stuff.
Oh, that would be the dream,
like, right? And it's just like you don't necessarily enjoy doing this clearly, and you don't want it to start to feel like too much work either, because if it starts to feel like a chore, you're not going to want to do it. And it's the same with writing. And I had a podcast as well, audio, a while back that stopped near the beginning of the pandemic. It was about travel, and it felt a little not right, maybe, to do that.
I'm gonna go ahead and take a break here.
Yeah. And I loved it, but I think if it had ever gotten to a point where I was like, wow, I really hate doing this, I just like, life's too short, man. And I feel the same way about writing. Like I am in the middle of trying to work on a fiction book, and if it never gets done, I've enjoyed the process. I've enjoyed sitting down at my computer and writing. I'd love for it to turn into a book, but if it doesn't, like, I can't beat myself up over it. I don't know.
That's an interesting perspective. So there was something you mentioned about or I don't know what you said, but I wrote down life after religion. So I think it's important to, in having these conversations, and I'm hoping that a lot of religious people will end up seeing this conversation and seeing that, even though two atheists are talking about religion and about atheism and all of that stuff, it's not, anything malicious or anything like that. And it sounds like we happen to have a number of things in common,
Totally.
but I want to highlight how when you're religious, especially, somebody who was as into it as you were, it is a big part of your life. And then so the thinking from the people who were part of that life think that when you become an atheist, now the atheism becomes, it takes the place of all of
Totally.
that stuff. And I don't know
There's a
how,
vacuum.
right. And so just what kind of things do obviously you're into writing, but just what other kinds of things do you do on a normal day?
Sure. So, I mean,
I think you meant on the book, I think you mentioned you were a baseball fan, right?
yeah, die hard. I mean,
Baseball's boring as shit. Oh my God. I
if
don't
I
know
had
how you do it.
if I had a nickel for every time I heard that, I'd be a very rich man, but I can't
Yeah.
help it. It's
I'm a UFC fan, so
okay.
the two are so diametrically opposed.
I mean, you should go check out some videos for baseball fights. There are some pretty good ones out there. So
Well, if it's not guaranteed, then
it's not. It's not. But
even hockey is a little slow for me these days.
fair enough. Yeah, I mean, so there's two ways to answer that question. One is the vacuum that religion left, which is that you still crave a lot of the feeling that it gave you, but you don't know where to get that from. So like, I think reading philosophy, like meditating is another one that's great. Listening to music is a big one for me. Like I like to take time and just like, I have a nice record player in my room. I'll just lay on my back and like listen to a record. And I think quietness and stillness is something that I got a lot of in religion and didn't necessarily realize how much I enjoy just like being in my own head. So like I think of like Eucharistic adoration when you're literally just like supposed to sit in front of this piece of bread and like bow down to it. It's you're sitting there silent for like an hour. And like I need that sometimes. Like, and it's got nothing to do with religion. I just need to shut the fuck up and like sit down and be quiet. And I think particularly where we're at in the world right now, it's a difficult thing to do. Like we're supposed to be working all the time. We're supposed to be productive. We're supposed to be going. And if we're not, like it makes you feel restless. And I think I needed to get over that for sure. In terms of other things I do to fill my time that don't have to do with religion, huge baseball fan, yes. Play and listen to a lot of music. Let's see. I am in school right now. That's an interesting one. I'm studying for an MBA and it's part-time at night. So I don't really feel like I have a social life at night during the week at all anymore. But I just turned 30 and like feel like I'm very much a live for the weekend kind of person right now.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep. I hear you. And I think the reason I ask and thank you for elaborating on the earlier point is again that it's not that because when you that when you're in a religion it encompasses a lot of your life. And when you're outside of that, you do need to find these other things that find that give you that fulfillment. And I think again, you and I seem to be I don't want to say in the minority, but in one group of atheists who have realized that this is the case. And I think perhaps it's people who never had religion, and so they never had that part of their life or that thing awakened. But for whatever reason, there seems to be a big sect of the atheist community, so to speak. And again, calling it a community is counterintuitive to my message.
Loose.
But that are absolutely the stereotypical quintessential heathens that the religious people think that we all are. And it's a sad thing because what those people are missing is not religion, as people like you and I have shown that we can find that spiritual and moral fulfillment in other places. And so I just, to all of those atheists, I agree with you that religion is stupid and that there's no ferryman in the sky. However, And again, I bring this up because I'm hearing from a lot of people in the realm of politics who were, you know, kind of center left and further on the right, but maybe not like super far right, who maybe weren't very religious. Now talking about how they want to get back into religion because of the values, because they look at the left and you know, this postmodernism, cultural Marxism, blah 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 blah, and they're not wrong. They're just wrong about what they're right about. It's not religion that you need to go back to. It's this spirituality and moral framework that you and I have outside of religion that needs to be added to the equation. It's not that, you know, it's not that we need to go backwards and put more religion we just, again, this comes down to my whole point of breaking apart the aspects and the dogma. And I think if you know, the people who, like, let's just say the opposite of the person who is protesting the abortion clinic, the person who is the counter protesters at that protest,
Yeah.
they, you know, are just as willing to treat you as an abortion clinic protester. They're willing to treat you as as a non-human, the same way they're protesting you treating that girl who's going to get an abortion in that same way. And the disconnect is that that there is religion on one side, and there's, for the most part, not religion on the other side. But the common thread is the lack of morality that is there. And so if you're doing these things, you're engaging in these things, it's not religion that you need. It's morality, it's spirituality, it's whatever you want to call it. And again, we have to say whatever you want to call it, because we don't have that language sussed out yet, because not enough people are digging in and trying to develop this secular framework that we can have that doesn't require us to take steps back and go back into the church.
Well, I think there are billions of religious people in the world, right? And I think
supposedly,
yes. I think there's got to be something biologically in our brains that isn't necessarily turned towards religion. I think a lot of religious people would tell you that that would be towards religion, but I think it's towards that spirituality, towards that that community, that
absolutely,
that sort of idea of being an essence that is within or within or outside of you, that like there's more of a world out there than you.
Exactly.
And
yes.
it doesn't necessarily have to be supernatural.
Right. And that's the problem, is that it's a false dichotomy that it has to be religious or just not anything. And it's like, there's a middle ground where we can take, you know, like I've been saying, you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, get rid of the bullshit, keep the good stuff. That's all we need to do. Done. Now, obviously,
only it were that easy, right?
I mean, obviously easier said than done, but coming to the conclusion that is what needs to be done is rather simple, I think, to me. I obviously have thought a lot about it, but, you know, like I was saying in the beginning, the regardless of where you are politically, the problems that you see in society, whatever, you know, is personal to you, I think that it comes down to a difference in values. And when religion was a bigger part of society, more people shared those common values, even though, like we've been saying, being religious doesn't exempt you from being an asshole. But the framework was still there. And so even though the church has been lying to us for centuries, there was a positive byproduct. And so the fact that what they were selling still is just untrue, and that is immovable, that's you can't get past that, then you're not going to get people who either didn't grow up with religion or did grow up with religion like us and have come away from religion. You're not going to get us to believe in that stuff anymore. That's a non-starter. That's not going to happen. So there needs to be another way for the the values to be distilled. And when it becomes, when you relegate it back to the church, then it just becomes another right-left issue. And the people on the right go to church and they have values, and people on the left don't go to church, and they will happily engage in a lack of morality, because and I don't like it. I don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you are actively taught to not think critically about one thing, it leads you to be susceptible to not critically think about other things. And I think we're seeing that right now with a lot of the vaccine stuff, with a lot of the other things going on, where it's like, I thought it was funny. I don't know if you follow football at all, but there's Aaron Rodgers, the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. And he essentially said like that he was getting his medical information from Joe Rogan. And then a couple days later, he got turf toe and hurt his foot really bad. And I was like, okay, are you still getting your medical advice from Joe Rogan? Like, think critically. Like, you're going to a doctor for that. So why do you not trust a doctor about this other stuff? And like, it's a personal decision. You put in your body whatever you want to put in your body. I get that. But like, more along the lines of like, I think guns, for instance, like there's very little reason for someone to have an AR-15 in their home. I just think that's ridiculous. And if you think about it critically, you get to a place where you're like, all right, if someone wants to have a handgun for protection, sure, do that. But like, do we really need military style weapons? And I'm going on a political rant, point being that you tend to see a lot of those align with religious people. And I think,
well, and this is exactly the type of stuff that I am talking about, because I used to be super anti-gun. And the fact is, the reason you would want to have an AR-15 in the home rather than a handgun is because it's much more accurate. And you don't want to be in the dark fumbling around with it. It's much harder to shoot a handgun. And I've never even held a gun. I'm just now realizing that being anti-gun is usually a sign that you don't know a lot about guns. And I was very anti-gun without knowing a lot about guns. And the more I learn about guns, the more I realize that there is an arrogance in saying things like, why do you need an AR-15? There's a very, very practical answer to that. And the fact is, this is the same type of the same type of indoctrination of the fact and I don't know what you know about guns and what you don't know about guns, and I definitely don't know shit about guns. But I am realizing, like I said, that a lot of times when you actually listen to people who one of the biggest things that helped change my mind on a lot of this stuff, and specifically hunting, when guns, hunting go hand in hand.
I grew up in Missouri. I know a thing or two about hunting.
And growing up in Jersey without guns or hunting, I was just like, why would you ever need to do that? And then you listen to people who are hunters talk about how much they actually care about the environment, and when you kill an animal that is lived a wild, free life, that versus somebody who's cutting into a factory farm steak, it's like, well, okay, who's really not thinking critically now? And the default is because there is such an obvious flaw in the thinking on the right when it comes to religion, then there is it almost lends itself to, if there's other things that you disagree with the right about, then it must be because they are
great point.
They're not thinking critically. And this is this is exactly what I was referring to when I was saying that a lot of atheists are not engaging with they're not engaging with things the way that we should be, and it's because we know that religion is we know that religion is bad, and so we can just throw that away. And so anything kind of tied to it, then we can also throw that away. And so like, I'll give you a good example of since we were talking about abortion, I have been convinced that there is no more rational place to draw the line at where life begins than conception. That doesn't mean that the government has the right to dictate any medical procedures on you, and I believe that includes the jabs as well.
Sure.
But the traditional thinking is that because life begins at conception, therefore abortion should be illegal, or because life doesn't begin at conception and it's just a clump of cells, then it should. And those are not the things that should be deciding these policies. And even if you decide that I'm on the right side of it by being pro-choice, then but you think that life that there's a point from conception to wherever you decide that life begins, that it's not ending a process that would result in life. That's simply incorrect. And so,
well, your point overall, I think, and it's a great point, is that there's nuance to things.
Yes.
It's 100%. And
that's the long and short of it. That's a TLDR.
And also, I can disagree with you on anything you just said, and I still think you're a pretty nice guy. Like, I'm not going to tell you you're an idiot, and I'm not going to tell you that your way of thinking about it is wrong, because you're thinking about it. And like, I think we could pick anyone. We can pick guns. We can pick whatever you want. I can talk for days, but at the end of the day, like, I think there's so many people who their opinions are not informed. And I mean, if you're going to make any opinion without, I don't know, giving yourself some time to look at the background to that opinion, you're probably doing it wrong. And like, not that there aren't plenty of religious people who can think that way, but I do think often once you have sort of thought critically about religion, it opens the door to that critical thinking in other realms of things, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a very good point. And I think it goes both ways too, because now
Sure.
Again, as just the leftist narrative on the whole, not taking anything in particular, but just what you would find from an MSNBC on the daily. That is, whether it is the conclusions about policies, like we were just talking about, whether you fall on the quote unquote correct side or not, is all well and good. But if you think, I would rather you. Again, like you said, we can disagree and still think we like each other.
But also, we would never have the discussion if guns are good or bad. We would have the discussion about specific policies and what we think is a nuanced discussion.
Right. And I would rather talk to somebody who I disagree with, who has thought about it, than somebody I agree with who hasn't thought about it.
Totally.
The existence of tribal everything, this echo chamber society, is
political parties, religion,
all of it. I think politics has become the new religion, and it's sad to see, because I feel like I broke out of this thing that was controlling everybody one time already, and now it's just moved on, and it's taken over politics. And now there's, instead of it being Christians and Muslims, now it's left and right, and it's gotten, I mean, that's a whole other discussion. But yeah, that's it's
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, like you said, thinking critically about what you believe is important.
Totally.
And that's the long and short of it. And if you think about it long and hard, and you do decide that you do in fact believe in these things, you are still wrong, but at least you tried.
Yeah. I mean,
I am being facetious with that. No, and if you like, for example, Rusty Williams, who wrote Doubt and Trial from IDRYB 06, he again, the self-avowed agnostic pastor, which is virtually every pastor, but he's just smart enough to have put together that he doesn't know what he believes. He believes what he believes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a fascinating conversation about these things, and again, a lot of things that we disagreed about, especially being an atheist, and me thinking that his beliefs are in fact stupid. I think his beliefs are stupid, but because of the way that he takes those beliefs and implements them in his life, it is far better than somebody who would agree with me and just walk through life as just as an NPC and just not engage with society, because things change. And if you're not on the, if you're not paying attention, if you're not thinking critically about these things, then what you thought today might not apply with new information that we got tomorrow. And
Totally.
So yeah, I mean, we've been going for about an hour here, and I don't want to beat a dead horse.
Oh.
I'm definitely I'm glad we're able to have this conversation.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it, man. Thank you.
I think I try not to again, I try to make this about the author and not an opportunity for me to grandstand and get on my soapbox. But you provided me with the avenue to do so, and so I'm eternally grateful.
Yeah, of course. No, it's been fun, man.
If there is, if you want to plug the book, new book, socials, all that kind of stuff, the floor is yours.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to push the book. I'm doing a holiday promotion December 7th to December 26th, where it'll be like 15% off or something like that. So I'll essentially make no money on each sale, but I'm kind of okay with that. So it's available on lulu.com, which is the publisher. And then it's available on Amazon, which I'm sort of okay with. It's on Barnes and Noble, and it's on one other one that I can't remember the name of. But if you read it and pick it up, you can find me at Ryan Bedell on Instagram, RYBEDELL. I'd love to discuss. If you hate it and you just want to send me hate mail, by all means, you can do that too. I'll probably find it funny. And yeah, I'm always around if people want to talk about this sort of thing. If you're someone who's struggling with thoughts about how you will form your identity without your religion, or if you're worried about telling your parents or whatever it might be, seriously, reach out to me. I have like 10 followers, so I'll definitely see your message, and we can absolutely have that discussion.
Awesome. And we'll definitely have all that stuff linked below. So cool. Please purchase a copy of his book. And when is the new one? Oh, you said you're just writing that one, right?
Yeah, still working on that one.
If it comes out, it comes out. So we will keep an ear out for that, and maybe have you back to talk about that one.
Hey, that'd be great. Give me like a year or two, I think.
Hey, all the time you need. I'm hopefully not going anywhere. So definitely all the time you need. So thank you again for coming on the platform, and I had a great time.
Adam, it's been great. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. You have a good one.
You too.
All right. So what a cool episode. I thought so. I mean, you tell me. But I really enjoyed that conversation, and what I enjoyed most about it was how exactly, like I said in the discussion, I like being able to display a conversation between two atheists to the world as atheists who are not really trying to attack religion, who are not trying to do anything. Like, that's not what we do. That's not what consumes our mind in the same way that when like I said, when you're religious, that it's a part of your life. Like, being an atheist is a very, very small part of my life. Like, being UFC fan is a much bigger part of my life than being an atheist. Being a podcaster and a YouTuber is a much bigger part of my life. Being a dog trainer, all of these things are way bigger aspects of my personality and my identity than my atheism. And I while I do value the what I view as a privilege of having this way of thinking, I value that. But beyond that, there's the like Ryan was talking about, the spiritual and moral aspects of things are their own part of what you discover in living life and reading things and talking to other people about what they believe and just again living life and having experiences, you see very simply, like, the easy example is always about punching people, and it's like you don't need a god to tell you that you shouldn't punch people, because if you've ever been punched, you don't like it. So you shouldn't want a world where people go around punching each other. It's just that simple. And obviously, morality on the whole gets a lot more complicated than that. The point being, atheism is a very small part of most atheists' lives. And to my chagrin, the points I was making about how aspects of the left have become very dogmatic and similar to religions. He brings up I'm not a gun, like I said, never held a gun in my life. And he asked a very common question that similar to when having religious debates about, well, why don't you just go and kill and rape people if you don't believe in God? Well, there's a very clear answer to that. That's not a gotcha question. You just haven't thought about it. And the reasons that people have guns are very practical. It's not, that's not really debatable. It's just what you don't know. If you don't know that why people have guns, that's fine. But to think that because you don't know why people have guns, that why people don't have guns is ridiculous. Listen to that sentence. And that is what I think of as religious thinking, where you have from on high this edict that guns are bad, and so you don't need to dig into why guns are good or bad. The narrative is that guns are bad, and this, that, and the other, and so that's it. And I realized I was very much guilty of that myself. And it takes a lot of that introspection to realize that even if you are religious, that you need to take both religious and non-religious issues and concepts and contend with them seriously in your own mind for yourself, just so that you know what you know and you think the right things. If you're thinking something that is wrong, then you should want to be right. You shouldn't want to be wrong, right? That seems pretty basic. And so I just found it very interesting how he and I both as atheists can talk about how people are into dogmatic thinking, and it's like, okay, well, this doesn't make sense, and critical thinking, and then it comes up with a leftist talking point, and how is that not the same thing? I'm not some raging Republican, conservative, whatever. As I mentioned in the last episode, it was the first time that I felt comfortable just saying, okay, I guess if you guys are saying that if I don't think that all this woke stuff and all of that makes me conservative, then fine, I'm a conservative. I don't, like I said, I'm not a 2015 conservative by any stretch of the imagination. But if that's where the political climate has shifted to, then I'm conservative. And being an atheist, being an atheist conservative it's difficult to tiptoe around these things, because me and Ryan can joke about our perceived silliness of religion, but as soon as it goes down and it goes off of that thing, and remember, the atheism is a very small part of our personalities, respectively. And as soon as it goes into the political things, we have very different ways of thinking. And again, I think I'm right because I think about the things that I think, and I think that they're right. And when I think that they're wrong, I change them to things that I think are right. So I think I'm right. I could very well be wrong. I know that there's a lot that I don't know, but I do think that I'm right. And I continue to contend with that notion that I am right and that maybe I'm incorrect. And a lot of times I do find myself being incorrect, but on this point, it seems to be that the more I explore it, it seems to be running true, and that I do believe leftism is the new religion. I was just watching an Abin Preach video who were talking about woke people and how the biggest issue for them used to be the skinhead, religious right, that type of character. And in this day and age, the average person just going about their life, if you come across a skinhead that wants to kill you, that regardless of who you are, that's not going to be a good situation. But that's not really happening that often, versus you just going about your life and some woke incident happens. That is happening a lot to a lot of people. And so the question then becomes, how much is this wokeness stuff what we should be enacting? And I just don't personally think that it's the right way to go about what seems to be an attempt to fix society. And on the right, the attempt to fix society in that same way seems to be stepping back into the church. And I think that is, equally as bad. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to put a value on it, but I think they're both the wrong answers. I think they're both good attempts at, or attempts at good things, but I don't think they're the right answer. So I don't know. That was if you are a religious lefty, I am sure that you hate me, and I would love to hear what you think about this conversation. But even if you're not, whether you're an atheist, if you're a Christian, whatever you are, let me know what you thought about my thoughts. What you thought about Ryan's story, and what especially things like what does it take for someone who was once protesting an abortion clinic to be able to come on a public platform and say that, hey, I did that and that was fucked up. Not everybody's going to do that. Not everybody's going to go out to the protest in the first place. But of those people who are going to go out to the protest, very few are going to be willing to really take accountability and say that what I was doing, what I was engaging in, was not only not helpful, but it was not congruent with my goals of bettering society. And so I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I just know that some of them are not the right answers. So I'm trying to find the wrong answers and get rid of those so we can find some better answers. That's all I got. That's all I got for you. So thank you for tuning in for another episode of the I Didn't Read Your Book podcast. I am Lutch, your host. And today we were talking to Ryan Bedell from Altar Boy to Atheist, Giving Up on God. Links for that are going to be below. Another thing that would really help me, there are support links in the description below. I know this is just a small show, a new show. I would really like to grow it. I would really like to be able to have bigger conversations and get them out to bigger audiences of people. And the only way I can do that is with your help. So please, if you can donate anything, I would really appreciate that. If not, that's cool too. Just give a like, give your thoughts on the episode. Share this with somebody who might be interested in this type of atheist on atheist type of conversation. Or you can do none of that and sit at home and think about how awesome I am. I would love that too. Either way, happy birthday to me, and I will see you guys in the next one.